They said I was overreacting, just a wedding, nothing worth losing sleep over. Except the bride was my own sister and I wasn't even on the guest list. 150 people invited but not me, the sister who had carried her through every heartbreak, every crisis, every single mess she ever made. The truth. That cut wasn't about a seat at a wedding. It was about being erased. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't yet. Let's get into it. I was the middle Harlow Madeline to the DMV Maddie to everyone who wanted something from me. Emily came first, all bright teeth and bigger feelings. Jake came last. Me, I was the glue, not the ribbon, the strip you don't see holding the box together until someone pries it off and tosses it away. We grew up in a small Ohio town Friday night, football Sunday potlucks. Dad worked long shifts at the plant. Mom Diane when she was mad. Mom when she needed a favor volunteered for everything and collected the credit. I inherited her knack for smoothing disasters, not her spotlight. If something needed doing, it drifted to me. When Emily lost her first job at 23, I showed up with boxes and takeout and sat on her floor until the city quieted. 2 months later, another layoff hit. I transferred half my savings to cover her rent, called the utility company, negotiated the late fees. I built a spreadsheet and didn't announce it. I just did it. When her long-term boyfriend moved out while she was at work, I brought ice cream and a trunk of trash bags. We turned his absence into a purge, chipped mugs, his sweatshirts, the framed skyline he swore felt aspirational. Emily cried until she hiccuped, then laughed. I told her she'd be okay, then helped her be okay. Jake noticed. He'd squeeze my hand under the table like he was saying, "I see you, sis," without lighting a fuse. 22 saving diner tips to replace a car that barely started. He still remembered the time I argued his suspension down to lunch detention. Mom and I had a choreography. I brought her feelings. She spun them into lessons about gratitude. If I said, "It hurt that Emily forgot my birthday again," she said, "She's under a lot of stress, honey. Be the bigger person." If I mentioned I was tired after covering a bill, Mom tilted her head and praised my generous heart, as if naming the virtue meant I shouldn't notice the bruise. She didn't ask what I needed. She reminded me who I was expected to be. When Emily got engaged, the news landed like confetti. The ring appeared on a Tuesday. By Thursday, we were taste-testing cake. I made spreadsheets, negotiated a small venue discount over a website glitch, smoothed a seating issue with Aunt Lisa's in-laws, offered to run logistics the day of. "You're the best," Emily said, already texting her florist. I didn't need a parade. Not my name in lights or a toast in my honor. I just wanted a seat that wasn't folding and stuck behind a pillar. A thank you that wasn't an afterthought. A moment where the people I loved looked me in the eyes and saw the ways I showed up without being asked. I told myself family meant doing what needed doing and trusting the ledger to balance. But the ledger always tallied in one direction. On a humid Tuesday in July, after a 12-hour shift, I came home to the apartment I paid for by packing lunches and saying no to the small luxuries I helped Emily afford. I dropped keys in the dish, kicked off flats, and microwaved leftovers while my phone buzzed with the bridal thread sample, bouquets, blush linens, robe options. I wasn't a bridesmaid. Emily said it would complicate the vibe. There was a new DM from Emily. The preview on my lock screen said, "Hey, just wanted to let you know." I swiped it open. I read the message once, thinking I'd missed a word. I read it again slower, hearing her voice in my head like it might smooth the edges. "Hey, just wanted to let you know the guest list is finalized and we had to make some tough cuts. Hope you understand. Love you." Tough cuts. My name had become a budget line slashed by a red pen. I blinked, felt heat flood my cheeks before meaning did. I scrolled up, hunting for context, a mistake, anything. The planner screenshot in the group thread boasted a head count of 150. The venue capacity 150. My math worked. My place didn't. My fork hovered over the plastic container, then lowered to the coffee table like a white flag. The world did not change shape. The fridge hummed. Humid air pressed the window. The thrift store lamp threw a small cone of light over a patch of rug. Everything was ordinary, except the hinge inside me. The one that always swung toward yes, creaked, and refused to move. I typed, deleted, typed again. I tried humor. Did I miss when I became a cousin twice removed? I tried directness. Emily, I'm your sister. None of it left drafts. I could already hear Mom's sigh, the one that shrank me back into a rowdy child. It's just a wedding, Maddie. Don't make this about you. Be gracious. Across town, Emily was probably circling menu choices with a glitter pen, telling herself the same story Mom fed us Maddie will understand. Maddie always understands. That was the role. That was the script. I was supposed to nod swallow and make the cut look intentional. The phone buzzed again, a cascade of hearts from the group, someone posting a video of the venue at sunset. I couldn't make my eyes land on the beauty. The DM still sat open, bright as a hazard sign, daring me to accept that love could cut you and call it logistics. I stared until the words blurred. Then I held the phone steadier. It didn't change. The message didn't grow kinder the fifth time I read it. It didn't grow true. I set the phone face down and listened to my heartbeat climb into my throat like it wanted to speak for me. I flipped it over once more as if the pixels might have rearranged while I blinked. They hadn't. The text remained small and surgical. I read it one more time, disbelieving. Tough cuts. I called Mom before I could talk myself down. The message from Emily still glowed on my screen like a bruise, and I needed someone, anyone, to tell me it was a mistake. Mom picked up on the second ring, her voice cheerful like she was decorating a cake. "Hey, sweetheart, what's up?" I didn't bother with small talk. I just got a message from Emily. She says the guest list is finalized. I'm not on it. Silence just long enough to confirm what I already suspected. Then a sigh, soft and patronizing. "Oh, honey, it's just a wedding. Don't make a big deal out of this." I sat back staring at the ceiling. Not a big deal, I'm her sister. How am I not invited to my own sister's wedding? Mom clicked her tongue, the same sound she used when Jake tracked mud into the house as a kid. They had to keep the list small. "It's nothing personal." I laughed, sharp and humorless. Small Mom, she invited 150 people. I saw the Instagram post. Another pause, then a forced chuckle. "Well, weddings are expensive. Maybe she thought you wouldn't mind skipping this one." "Wouldn't mind." The words rattled through me like loose nails in a can. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. I covered half her rent when she lost her job. I helped her move twice. I picked her up when her car broke down at midnight. I was there through every breakup, every meltdown. And now I'm supposed to not mind being cut from her wedding. "Stop being dramatic," Mom said, a hint of irritation creeping in. "It's just one day. You're overreacting. Overreacting." My throat burned. I could already predict the cycle I'd argue she'd minimize. Emily would eventually give me some half-hearted apology, and I'd be expected to forgive, because that's what I always did. That was my role to bend until I disappeared. But not this time. The words I wanted to throw at Mom clotted in my throat, so I hung up instead. I sat there, phone still warm in my hand, replaying her voice in my head. It's just a wedding. The same script over and over. My feelings were never valid. My absence was always assumed. I thought about all the years I'd carried Emily's burdens. I was 10 when she came home crying after middle school, convinced her best friend had turned the whole class against her. I stayed up late with her rehearsing what she'd say the next day. She walked into school with borrowed confidence. I went in exhausted but proud. I was 16 when she dented Dad's car sneaking out. I lied, said I'd borrowed it without permission. I took the grounding and the endless chores while she went to prom. I was 21 when her college roommate kicked her out. I drove 3 hours in the middle of finals week, hauled her boxes up 3 flights of stairs, and told her she deserved better. Always me. Always the fixer, the buffer, the shield. Emily took and I gave because that's what sisters did, or at least what I thought they were supposed to do. But the text on my phone told a different story. To her, I wasn't a sister. I was optional, expendable, forgettable. My chest felt hollow, like someone had scooped me out with a dull spoon. Hurt wasn't even the right word, it was erasure, as if I had never mattered. I could picture Emily at her vanity curling her hair while her bridesmaids squealed about centerpieces. She probably hadn't even hesitated when she cut my name from the list. She probably assumed I'd understand the way I always did. But staring at the glowing message, something inside me snapped. I realized I didn't want to fight my way into a seat at a table where I wasn't wanted. I didn't want to play the part of the invisible sister one more time. For the first time in my life, I didn't want to fix it. If they didn't want me at the wedding, then fine, I wouldn't be there. But I wasn't going to sit around in my apartment stewing while they played happy family without me. No, if I was being erased, then I would erase myself on my own terms. My laptop was still on the coffee table, a sliver of light glowing from its charging port. I pulled it toward me and opened the browser. Flight search bars blinked back at me, waiting. I wasn't sure yet where I was going, only that it had to be far away from Ohio, far away from the church where Emily would be saying vows I wasn't deemed important enough to witness. I stared at the options: Miami, Cancun, Barbados. The cursor pulsed like a heartbeat. And that's when the thought rooted in me, steady and wild all at once: if Emily could celebrate her happiest day without me, then I would carve out a happiness of my own. Not as an afterthought, not as a filler, but as the main event. I clicked search flights, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I had a savings account tucked away for someday. A down payment on a house, maybe. A rainy day fund. The kind of money you guard, but never touch. But staring at the glow of my laptop screen that night, scrolling through destinations with turquoise water and palm trees bending in the sun, I realized someday had arrived. Not in the way I planned, but in the way I needed. I booked it in less than an hour, a 5-star Caribbean resort ocean view suite. All-inclusive everything. Spa services, private beach access, infinity pool. The works. I didn't even flinch when I hit confirm purchase. For years I'd sacrificed what I wanted so Emily or Mom could get what they wanted. This was my turn. 2 weeks later, when Emily would be walking down the aisle, I'd be boarding a plane. Not as an escape, but as a declaration. A rebellion dressed in sunscreen and linen. The morning of the flight, I wheeled my suitcase through the terminal, heart pounding like I was sneaking out of my own life. My ticket was first class, another indulgence I would have once called reckless. But today, it felt like justice. When the attendant offered me champagne as I found my seat, I took it with both hands. The flute was cool against my fingers, bubbles catching the light like tiny fireworks. I snapped a picture, legs stretched out, glass-raised clouds winking outside the window, and captioned it, "Guess I didn't make the guest list, but I think I'll survive." I hit post. The response was immediate. Cousin Jake dropped a string of laughing emojis. My Aunt Lisa commented, "Good for you. Should have taken me with you." Even people I hadn't spoken to in years chimed in, living the dream. "Take me next time." "Iconic move, Maddie." And then, of course, came Mom. 3 texts in a row. "Mom. Where are you, Mom? You're seriously missing your sister's wedding over this, Mom. You're being petty." I sipped my champagne and muted the thread. For once, I didn't feel guilty. I felt powerful. Because here's the truth. This trip wasn't about palm trees or fancy drinks with little umbrellas. It was about saying no. It was about choosing me after years of being the afterthought. It was petty, sure, but it was also profound. Every dollar I spent, every mile that plane carried me away, was proof that I didn't need their permission to exist. When the plane lifted off the runway, my body pressed into the seat as the world dropped away beneath me. Ohio shrank into a patchwork quilt, the wedding chaos dissolving into distance. For the first time in years, I wasn't on call for anyone. I wasn't waiting to pick up a phone that only rang when someone needed saving. I was free. The resort was something out of a fantasy. The lobby stretched open to the sea palm fronds brushing against beams of sunlight, staff greeting me with a cocktail before I even checked in. My suite had floor-to-ceiling windows that spilled into the ocean, a balcony big enough to dance on, and the kind of bed you could sink into like it was swallowing you whole. I tossed my suitcase on the floor, stepped out to the balcony, and let the salt air wrap around me. The horizon stretched so far, it looked infinite blue, bleeding into blue. I snapped another photo this time with the caption, "When one door closes, another opens." Preferably to a beachside suite with unlimited margaritas. I knew it would find its way back to Emily, to Mom, to everyone who thought I should be sitting politely in the shadows at that wedding. And I wanted it to. Because for once, they could feel what it was like to be left out. The next morning, I woke to the sound of waves and birds instead of alarms. I ordered room service pancakes fluffy enough to melt in my mouth, fruit so sweet it ruined grocery store produce forever, coffee so rich it felt sinful. I ate on the balcony with my hair still messy, legs stretched, sun warming my skin. Every bite tasted like defiance. By the afternoon, I was stretched out on a sunbed by the infinity pool, martini in hand, watching the horizon blur into sky. My phone buzzed occasionally with likes and comments on my posts, but I ignored them. I wasn't here for validation. I was here for myself. But when the wedding weekend finally arrived, I couldn't resist turning my phone on. The screen lit up instantly, dozens of missed calls, a flood of messages. Mom, Emily, cousins, even numbers I didn't recognize. My notifications exploded like fireworks in the dark. At first I laughed. Of course they couldn't leave me alone even now. But then the volume of it hit me, call after call, message after message piling in non-stop. I set the phone down on the side table, stared at it for a moment, the screen vibrating against the wood, and felt something shift in my chest. This wasn't just wedding chatter. Something was wrong. The wedding had begun, and my phone was blowing up like the world was on fire. The phone wouldn't stop buzzing. It skittered against the glass table by my pool chair, rattling like an insect trapped under a jar. I watched the waves roll in, pretending I couldn't hear it, sipping slowly from the stem of my martini. My toes dangled over the edge of the infinity pool, the ocean stretching endlessly beyond it. Call after call, text after text. The names scrolled across the lock screen. Mom, Jake, even numbers I didn't recognize. I smirked, adjusted my sunglasses, and let it ring. If this was another round of guilt trips, they'd have to stew in their own silence. But then a notification preview slid across the screen. From cousin Melissa. "You won't believe what just happened." Something about that sentence cracked my composure. I reached over, swiped the screen, and opened the flood. Melissa's next text came fast. The groom walked out, like literally walked out, mid-reception, full-on fight with Emily, and then gone. I blinked. For a second I thought maybe the sun was frying my brain. I scrolled down, heart-skipping as messages stacked. "Jake dude, you dodged a bullet." "Uncle Rob. This family is falling apart. We need you here." "Mom. Call me right now. This is an emergency." Melissa again. He left her. He actually left her. I sat up, the towel sliding from my shoulders. "Oh my God," I whispered into the salt air. The story pieced itself together through the chaos of texts. Emily and her groom had some kind of screaming match near the dance floor. Guests froze with forks halfway to their mouths. He called her selfish, ungrateful, impossible, loud enough for the DJ to kill the music. She shot back something about him never being good enough. He dropped his glass, cursed, and stormed out. Just like that. Gone. The reception collapsed in minutes. Uncle Rob and Dad started yelling over whose side of the family was ruining the Harlow reputation. Grandma burst into tears, convinced the entire thing was a sign from God. The venue, desperate to salvage order, shut down the bar early after some cousin tried to climb it for shots. It was carnage. And while the confetti of their perfect day turned to ashes, my phone filled with one panicked plea after another. "Maddie, please pick up. We need you here. You always know how to calm her down. Emily's hysterical, she won't listen to anyone. This family is in crisis. Come home now." I leaned back in the lounge chair, tilted my sunglasses down, and let the grin spread across my face. The same family that had decided I wasn't important enough to sit in a folding chair at the ceremony now suddenly needed me to rescue their burning carnival of a wedding. The irony was so thick it was intoxicating. I scrolled until I hit the message from Mom. "This isn't the time for one of your moods. Your sister needs you. Come home right now. Be mature about this." I laughed out loud, startling the couple in the next cabana. Mature was covering Emily's rent when she blew through her savings. Mature was lying to Dad so she wouldn't get grounded. Mature was cleaning up every mess she ever made while Mom whispered that I should be the bigger person. They wanted the bigger person now. They wanted the fixer. Too late. I set my drink down and took a photo of the pool, the water blending seamlessly into the horizon, the sky so blue it hurt. Then I typed a single caption. "Sorry. I'm a little busy enjoying my overreaction." I hit send. Seconds later, the screen lit up again. This time, the name froze me. Emily. For the first time since the whole ordeal began, my sister was reaching out directly. My thumb hovered over the message pulse, ticking in my ears. "Please, I need you." I read it 3 times, trying to summon the voice I used to know, Emily crying into my shoulder after a breakup. Emily squealing with relief when I fixed her mistakes, Emily saying, "You're the best," without even meaning it. But all I could see was her text from weeks ago. "Tough cuts. Hope you understand." And now here she was, broken at the altar, begging for the sister she hadn't wanted in the first place. The sun beat down on me, hot and merciless. I reached for my drink again, swirling the ice until it clinked like tiny bells. My lips curved into a slow, deliberate smile. For the first time in my life, Emily needed me. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to give her what she wanted. The screen glared in my palm, Emily's message hanging there like bait. "Please. I need you." My thumbs moved before I could second-guess myself. "Sorry, I'm busy enjoying my overreaction." I hit send, then clicked straight to her contact info. Block. One tap and the lifeline between us severed. I did the same to Mom, who had spent the last hour spamming me with increasingly frantic texts. "Come home. Fix this. Be the bigger person. Don't abandon us now. Block." Jake's number 2, not because I hated him, but because I knew they'd use him as bait if they couldn't get through themselves. Aunt's uncles, even Melissa, though she'd been the only one with sense. My thumb scrolled like a guillotine. Block, block, block. The silence that followed was immediate, deafening, and delicious. I set my phone face down on the table and leaned back in the sun lounger. The waves rolled in steady, each one erasing the noise of Ohio a little further from my body. The bartender, a tanned man with a smile too wide to be real, drifted by. I raised a hand without words. He nodded, disappeared, and returned with another drink. The glass beaded cold against my fingertips. I closed my eyes and let the sound of the ocean smother the chaos in my head. For once, I wasn't on call. For once, I wasn't the fixer, the rescuer, the one expected to glue the pieces together when everyone else shattered them. My whole life, I had been trained to swoop in, whether it was Emily's heartbreaks, Mom's guilt spirals, or Jake's teenage stunts. If I didn't show up, I was selfish. If I did, I was invisible. But here, under the Caribbean sun, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't selfish. I was free. Each sip of the cocktail tasted like rebellion, sweet, tangy, laced with power. It wasn't just alcohol, it was dignity, liquefied. I stretched toes, pointed toward the horizon, and imagined the scene back home. Emily in tears, makeup streaking down her face, Mom pacing relatives, shouting over one another. Their voices rising in panic, searching for me like a lost key. And me hundreds of miles away, turning my face toward the sun. It was petty. It was vindictive. It was glorious. By the time night fell, the chaos had melted from my skin. I wandered down to the resort's private beach, the moonlight painting the waves silver. I let the tide kiss my ankles, the salt stinging but clean. My phone stayed behind in the room, face down, smothered in a silence I had chosen. I breathed deeply in and out, and for the first time in years my chest didn't feel tight. When I finally crawled into bed, the sheets crisp and cool, I slept like I hadn't since childhood, unbroken, dreamless, and heavy. The next morning, sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I stretched groggy but blissful until I spotted my phone blinking faintly on the nightstand. A tiny notification badge had slipped through before I'd turned it fully silent. A voicemail. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. Jake's voice came through in a hurried whisper like he was hiding in a closet. "Maddie, listen. Don't hang up. Mom and Emily, they're furious. They think you're making them look bad, like you planned this whole thing to embarrass them. Maddie, they're talking about staging some kind of family sit-down when you get back. Like an ambush. I don't know what they'll do, but it sounds ugly. Just be careful, okay? Call me if you need backup." The voicemail clicked off, leaving me in the silence of the ocean breeze drifting through the balcony doors. I sat there, phone still warm in my hand, a slow smile creeping across my face. So now it wasn't just begging. It was plotting. They wanted to erase me from the wedding. Now they wanted to erase my rebellion. Let them try. Because I wasn't coming back as the girl they thought they could cut and control. I was coming back on my own terms if I decided to come back at all. I paced my suite barefoot, the cool tile soothing against my skin, as Jake's voicemail replayed in my head. An ambush. A family sit-down. The words tasted bitter and laughable at the same time. They hadn't wanted me at the wedding, but now they wanted to stage a tribunal the moment I returned. I poured myself a glass of water, stared out over the balcony at the horizon, and dialed the only person in my family I still trusted to speak straight. Melissa. She answered on the first ring, her voice bubbling with the kind of energy that comes from witnessing chaos up close. "Oh my God, Maddie, you actually picked up. I've been dying to talk to you. Are you sitting down?" "I'm standing," I said dryly, but a smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. "What happened?" Melissa let out a breathless laugh. Everything happened. You are not going to believe this." I leaned against the balcony door glass, sweating in my hand. "Try me." Her words came in a torrent. After the groom stormed out, Emily had detonated. Not just crying a full-blown meltdown, she'd screamed, thrown a centerpiece across the room, hurled her bouquet at one of the bridesmaids. Guests scattered like pigeons. The DJ tried to restart the music, but Emily shouted over it until the mic screeched. Then Grandma, God bless her blunt honesty, stood up in front of everyone and announced that the wedding was cursed because Emily had disrespected blood by excluding me. "She said you were the family's protection," Melissa reported between gasps of laughter. "Like you're some kind of guardian angel, and Emily basically hexed herself." I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my glass. "You're kidding. I swear on my life," Melissa said. And it didn't stop there. "Uncle Rob started shouting at your dad, blaming his side of the family for raising selfish kids. Dad snapped back about Rob always being jealous. They were nose to nose before the staff dragged them apart. And then Aunt Lisa tried to mediate, but your mom told her to shut up. It was like Jerry Springer in tuxedos." I pressed my palm to my forehead, wheezing. "This is insane. Insane." Melissa agreed, and kind of poetic. The whole reception collapsed in under an hour. They closed the bar early, people started leaving in droves. Emily ended up sitting alone in her dress mascara, running, wailing that everyone had betrayed her. I couldn't stop laughing. The sound burst out of me sharp and loud until tears pricked my eyes. The same family who cut me out to keep things picture perfect had spiraled into public disaster without me. It was almost too perfect. But then Melissa's voice dipped lower. "Here's the wildest part. Oh, there's more." She hesitated, then said, "Some of them are blaming you." The laughter cut short in my throat. Blaming me for what? For not being there to fix it. Melissa sounded disgusted. "I overheard Aunt Lisa telling your mom, if Maddie had been here she would have calmed Emily down. She always does. She would have talked sense into the groom. None of this would have happened. For a moment, I stood in stunned silence, staring at the endless horizon as the absurdity landed. Then a jagged laugh tore out of me. So let me get this straight. They slice me off the guest list like I'm expendable, but then when it all blows up, suddenly it's my fault for not being there to save them. Exactly. Melissa's voice was tight with both anger and amusement. It's insane. They exclude you and still expect you to clean up their mess. The irony was so thick it nearly suffocated me. My whole life had been this script, me as the fixer, the safety net, the emotional janitor. And even when they literally erased me, they still couldn't imagine surviving without me. I sank into the lounge chair on my balcony, shaking my head, still chuckling. Unbelievable. Actually, no, it's completely believable. Melissa exhaled into the phone. I know you're done with them, and honestly, good for you. But I wanted you to hear it from me before the narrative spreads. What narrative? She hesitated, then dropped her voice to a near whisper. Your mom is planning a family intervention for when you get home. I went still. She kept saying, we need to sit Maddie down and make her understand what she's done, like you're some rebellious teenager who ruined Christmas. The ocean breeze slipped through the balcony doors, warm and salty against my skin, but a chill worked its way down my spine. An intervention. A manufactured ambush. They wanted to punish me for choosing myself. I tilted my head back, let out a laugh that was half disbelief, half fury. Let them plan it, I said finally, voice steady. Because if they think I'm walking into that house unprepared, they don't know me at all. Melissa was quiet a moment, then whispered, You're really not. Are you? No, I said, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. I'm not. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel fear at the thought of standing alone against them. I felt ready. After Melissa's call, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at my laptop, the soft hum of the ceiling fan blending with the crash of waves outside. My return flight loomed in 2 days, and with it the ambush waiting back home. Mom Emily, the whole circus of relatives itching to sit me down and correct me like I was a broken appliance. The very thought made my chest tighten, but then just as quickly the tension dissolved into clarity. I didn't owe them my return. I didn't owe them anything. I opened the airline's website and clicked through to manage my booking. My cursor hovered over the change flight option, that tiny square of digital freedom. For one suspended moment, I imagined going back, playing the role again, being swallowed into their guilt and demands. My stomach turned. No. I selected Extend Trip. My fingers moved steady, almost ceremonial, as I booked another 7 days. Another week of sunrises over the Caribbean, another week of cocktails by the infinity pool, another week of me. The confirmation email pinged into my inbox. Your trip has been extended. We look forward to hosting you. I exhaled a deep, shaking breath that felt like it came from the bottom of my ribs. That single click had done what years of begging hadn't. I'd severed their grip. Later that afternoon, I walked along the beach with the ocean foaming at my ankles. My phone dangled in my hand, still clogged with blocked notifications. I lifted it, snapped a photo of my footprint stretching into the horizon, and typed 2 words as a caption, 0 regrets. I posted it and slid the phone back into my pocket. By dinner, I'd heard through the grapevine filtered via Melissa, who seemed to be my one remaining ally, that the family had seen it. Rage rippled through them like a brush fire. They think you're mocking them, she texted me. Emily said you're cruel. Your mom said you've changed. Aunt Lisa said you're finally standing up for yourself, so silver lining. I chuckled into my mojito. They were right, I had changed. Or maybe I'd just stopped pretending. Because here's the truth. I felt lighter. Every blocked call, every ignored text, every sip of rum on that balcony stripped another weight from my shoulders. My worth didn't live in their approval, their conditional love, their endless demands. For years, I had been the invisible scaffolding propping up their lives. Now I'd walked away, and the structure had collapsed under its own rot. That wasn't my fault. That was proof of how much they'd leaned on me while pretending I didn't matter. It hit me then that this was more than a vacation. This was an act of reclamation, the purest embodiment of a value I'd been raised to admire, but never allowed to live freedom. In America, we preached resilience, independence, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. But in my family, that sermon twisted into exploitation. They celebrated freedom in theory, but expected my servitude in practice. I was supposed to sacrifice without complaint, forgive without limits, and smile while doing it. Not anymore. Now I was living that freedom for myself, choosing my path, my peace, my joy, not theirs. I thought about generations of people before me who had clawed their way out of suffocating expectations, who had built their lives from the wreckage of control. Maybe I wasn't breaking new ground, but I was finally walking the path they'd carved, the right to be whole, even if it meant standing alone. That night I sat on the balcony with a notebook from the hotel gift shop, its cover painted with palm leaves. I poured myself a glass of wine and began to write not to them, but to myself. I wrote about Emily's selfishness, about Mom's constant dismissal, about every sacrifice I'd made that was erased from memory the moment it was inconvenient. I wrote about the sting of that text, Tough Cuts, and how it had cracked open something inside me that would never close again. By the time I stopped pages crammed with slanted handwriting, the notebook was heavy with truth. I closed it, pressing my palm flat against the cover like sealing a vow. My phone buzzed again, another missed call that slipped through from a number I didn't recognize. I ignored it. Instead, I opened my notes app and began drafting something else, a single final message. Not a plea, not an apology, not even an explanation. A declaration. I typed slowly, carefully, each word like a stone laid in place. You wanted a wedding without me. Now you get a life without me. I am not your fixer. I am not your scapegoat. I am done. Have fun cleaning up your own messes. I stared at it, the black letters against the white screen burning into my mind. My thumb hovered over send, but I didn't press it, not yet. I wanted them to stew in silence a little longer. For now, the draft sat there glowing faintly, a match waiting to be struck. And on that balcony with the Caribbean night pressing warm around me and the sea whispering below, I smiled to myself. The severing had begun. The only question left was whether I would finish it with a whisper or a blaze. The draft sat in my notes app for 2 days, simmering like an ember I refused to snuff out. Every morning I read it over, fingers hovering, wondering if I should press send. Every night I fell asleep with the phone face down, its glow seeping faintly through the glass, reminding me of the words waiting to be unleashed. Finally, on my 6th morning in paradise, I decided enough was enough. I pulled the balcony curtains wide and let the sunrise blaze into my room, golden light pouring across the floorboards. The air smelled of salt and flowers. It felt like the world was daring me to stop hesitating. I opened the Notes app one last time. My heart thudded not with fear, but with something sharper, anticipation. I copied the words, pasted them into a group message to Emily and Mom, and read them aloud under my breath, steady and clear. You wanted a wedding without me? Now live without me. I'm not your backup plan anymore. Then I pressed send. The message shot off into the ether, a blade I'd honed for weeks now, finally freed from its sheath. Almost instantly, their names lit up on the screen, first Mom, then Emily, scrambling to respond. I didn't even look. My thumb moved with a certainty I'd never felt before. Block, block. And just like that, it was done. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full. Full of all the space I'd cleared by refusing to carry their weight anymore. Full of the clarity I'd craved since I was a kid, waiting for scraps of validation that never came. I sat back in the chair, staring out at the horizon as a tide of relief washed over me. My chest felt open, lighter than it had in years. All the resentment, all the swallowed anger, all the old wounds, they didn't vanish, but they loosened their grip. They no longer owned me. I owned me. That evening, I booked myself on a sunset cruise. A celebration not of spite, not of revenge, but of freedom. The boat was small, intimate, with only a handful of other passengers. We slipped out of the harbor as the sun dipped low, the sky painting itself in streaks of orange and purple. The air was warm but breezy, carrying the scent of the ocean straight into my lungs. I stood at the railing, a glass of champagne in hand, the sea stretching endlessly before me. For once, I wasn't thinking about who needed me, or who might be disappointed, or what role I was supposed to play. I wasn't anyone's safety net or stand-in or scapegoat. I was just Maddie Grace Harlow, a woman watching the sun melt into the water alive in her own skin. As the boat glided further from shore, I thought about all the years I'd lost trying to earn love that had strings attached. I thought about Emily, who cut me out without hesitation, and Mom, who taught me that my feelings were always too much. And then I thought about myself, the girl who had carried them both for too long. And I smiled, because for the first time, I had put her first. The sky darkened into indigo stars, flickering awake one by one. I lifted my glass in a quiet toast to the ocean, to the night, to myself. "Here's to no regrets," I whispered. The boat swayed gently, the horizon wide and unbroken. I felt the question rise unbidden, a whisper that used to haunt me whenever I dared to imagine a life beyond them. What comes next? But this time the thought didn't tighten my chest. It didn't fill me with dread or guilt. It sparked something electric in my veins. Excitement. For once, the unknown wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Back in my suite, the notebook with palm leaves on its cover lay open on the desk. I uncapped a pen, the same one the hotel had slipped into the drawer beside the stationery, and stared at the blank page. The boat ride still clung to me, the scent of salt on my skin, the memory of stars unfurling over the water, and I wanted to capture it before it dissolved into memory. I began to write. Betrayal. Rebellion. Liberation. The words scrawled across the top of the page like a headline. Underneath, I began filling in the story, not in neat chapters, but in fragments, moments that had built the arc of my undoing and my becoming. I wrote about the text that gutted me, tough cuts, how disbelief had curdled into rage and rage into resolve. I wrote about booking the flight, the champagne glass in first class, the photo captioned, "I think I'll survive." I wrote about the phone buzzing with the news of the grooms storming out, about my laughter echoing into the Caribbean night. And I wrote about the final text, the blade I'd let fly, "I'm not your backup plan anymore." Each line loosened something in me. For years I'd swallowed my story, edited myself into the background, erased my own hurt, so their version of events could stand unchallenged. Now I was rewriting it line by line in my own hand. Still, grief hovered like a ghost. I paused, pen dangling as the ache pushed through. I had lost something real, even if it was poisoned the illusion of belonging. I'd lost the identity I had worn like armor, the reliable one, the fixer, the good daughter. Without those titles, who was I? The question made my chest hollow for a moment. But then I realized maybe that hollowness wasn't absence. Maybe it was space. Space to fill with something I chose. I started writing again, this time about the future. Career goals. I'd always been the dependable one at work, too, the one who took on the projects no one else wanted. But what if I stopped hiding behind reliable and went after leader? I wanted to start applying for managerial roles, maybe even shift into consulting. I could build something that wasn't just steady but thriving. Chosen family. The thought made me smile as I scribbled. Friends who laughed with me, not at me. People who saw me as whole, not as a resource to mine. I'd start investing in those connections again, nurturing friendships I'd neglected while playing nursemaid to my family. Relationships. My pen hovered, then moved again. I wanted reciprocity. Someone who gave as much as they took, who didn't see my kindness as a blank check. The kind of partnership where love wasn't measured in what could be extracted, but in what could be shared. The page grew messy words crammed in the margins, but it pulsed with something new, not survival, but joy. I leaned back in the chair, let the pen fall, and exhaled. I wasn't running from pain anymore. I was walking towards something brighter. The realization made me laugh soft, almost shy at first, then fuller. Resilience. That was the word that kept circling back. Not the grit they demanded from me, not the silent endurance they exploited. This was different. This was the resilience of choosing joy even after loss. The waves crashed below my balcony, steady and unbothered, like they'd been doing long before me and would keep doing long after. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't drowning in them. I was part of their rhythm. I closed the notebook, my hand resting on its cover. It was enough to keep this story for myself. But a thought pressed in, insistent. For years, my family had controlled the narrative, painting me as dramatic, selfish, too sensitive, ungrateful. They'd spun their web so tightly that even I started to believe it. But now I had my version carved in ink. Maybe it was time to make it more than private. I picked up my phone, opened a fresh document, and typed a title, "When My Sister Cut Me from Her Wedding." Just seeing it there sent a thrill through me, half terror, half triumph. If I shared it online anonymously or even with friends, it wouldn't just be a story. It would be ownership. It would be saying out loud that I was not what they'd painted me to be. I stared at the blinking cursor, excitement tingling in my veins. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of telling my story. I was ready. By the time my extended trip wound to an end, I felt like I had shed a skin. My suitcase was heavier than when I arrived, souvenirs tucked between sundresses and sandals, bottles of local rum wrapped in beach towels, seashells I'd picked up on morning walks lining the inside pocket. But the real weight was gone. The invisible burden I'd carried for years had slipped from my shoulders somewhere between the infinity pool and the shoreline. The taxi ride from the airport to my apartment felt strangely surreal. Ohio looked the same, flat stretches of highway billboards promising fast food at the next exit, neighborhoods of tidy lawns and mailboxes leaning slightly, but I wasn't the same woman who had left it. When I unlocked the door and stepped into my small but sunlit apartment, I felt a swell of gratitude. This space was mine. Not a family home layered with decades of control, not a stage for endless arguments. Just mine. The walls, the furniture, the quiet. It all felt like freedom in its simplest form. I set my suitcase by the couch, dropped the souvenirs onto the kitchen table, and opened the blinds. Afternoon light spilled across the room, warm and golden, catching on the small plant I'd left by the window. Somehow it had survived without me. The first wave of messages arrived within hours. Melissa texted, "Just checking in, are you home? I want to hear everything when you're ready." Jake called twice, then left a short voicemail. His voice was softer than before, cautious. "Maddie, I know you're mad and you're right to be. But Mom's, well, she's not letting it go. Just do what you need to do. I'm here if you want to talk." And then tucked into my mailbox the next morning, an envelope with Diane Harlow's neat looping handwriting. I stood at the counter with a mug of coffee, staring at it like it might bite. My thumb traced the edge of the paper before I dropped it unopened into the drawer. I didn't need to read it. I knew what it would say. Excuses laced as apologies, manipulations disguised as love. Maybe even an attempt to rewrite what had happened, to gaslight me into believing I was cruel for choosing myself. No. That door was closed. The blocked numbers stayed blocked. The letter stayed sealed. For the first time in my life, I didn't flinch at silence. I welcomed it. Days slipped into a rhythm. I unpacked slowly, placing seashells on the bookshelf, draping a new sarong over the back of my chair, letting the scent of coconut oil linger in the air. I reopened my notebook, scribbling plans with new energy applications to submit dinners to host with friends. I wanted to draw closer goals that felt exciting instead of obligatory. The grief still stirred, sometimes faint, but present. I'd lost the illusion of family, and there were moments when that absence ached. But the ache no longer defined me. It was just one thread in a much larger tapestry. What defined me now was choice. One morning, a week after my return, I woke before dawn. The city outside was quiet. the streets still wrapped in shadows. I padded barefoot to the balcony wrapped in a blanket and pushed open the sliding door. The air was cool, tinged with dew, and the faint hum of the world waking up. I leaned against the railing, sipping from a steaming mug, and watched the horizon lighten. First gray, then pink, then a slow wash of gold spreading across the sky. For years I'd woken with a knot in my chest, dreading the next crisis, the next demand, the next reminder that my worth depended on how well I could fix someone else's life. But standing there, dawn unfurling around me, I realized I wasn't holding my breath anymore. I was breathing. Deep, unhurried, my lungs filling and emptying with no weight pressing against them. The sun crested the skyline light spilling over rooftops, and for a moment I felt reborn. Not as the forgotten middle child, not as the fixer, not as the scapegoat. Just me, Maddie Grace Harlow. I closed my eyes, let the warmth kiss my face, and smiled. For once, I wasn't the forgotten sister. I was the author of my own life, and I had no regrets. And with that final sunrise, Maddie closed the chapter on years of being overlooked and finally stepped into her own freedom. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. Your voice matters here. Thank you for listening. This has been a story from Revenge Served Cold. We'll see you next time.